So initially, the center, Transformational Healing Universe, it really started in 2005, 2006. That's when my wife and me got married, and we started doing yoga events, and we called it Transformational Healing Universe. That was the initial name, and we were just doing yoga events and working in the yoga community doing healing work, mostly chiropractic. And we did that for basically 15 years. We would go to 2 events a year, big events where there were thousands of people, and treated hundreds of people a day. It was very intense. So we got a lot of, what do they say, cut our steel in those 15 years. But what happened that formed this center was that I had a client in 2018, and I was living in a house in West Hollywood that had a little back house, and that was my clinic actually. And this woman came to me from a referral from a mutual friend. She had 4-stage pancreatic cancer. The tumor was the size of a 9-month pregnant woman, right? And she was a wife of a farmer from Iowa. And everyone in that town literally got cancer from the glyphosate spraying that they had been doing for decades, literally, right? And so she came here and she said, listen, I will do anything you tell me. I just want to live. And I'm like, okay. I had already at that point decades of experience. My first wife passed away from cancer, so I had a lot of background experience in dealing with cancer cases. And so I took every bit of knowledge I had from the last 25 years, and I put together a protocol for her, and included, and this woman, by the way, was a badass. She just did everything I told her without reserve. And I said, the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna go into this ice bath, 32 degree for 11 minutes. And she got right in and without hesitation went for 11 minutes from day one, and started doing the Wim Hof breathing. And it literally within one day, I mean, this sounds incredible, but within one day of her starting treatment with the protocol I designed for her, she was off her morphine. And within 2 months, so she stayed with me for 2 solid months. And by the time she was done, the tumor had shrunk by 2/3 and was broken into tiny pieces. Like it was like flat versus being like that. And so major, major healing. Unfortunately, I had to leave to go to my yoga event. She had to go back to Iowa, so I didn't really get to continue. I'm sure if I had, that she probably would have lived even a lot longer. But unfortunately, she did pass away, but it was much longer than anticipated, so that was good. But anyway, the reason I'm telling you that story is because that was the impetus that started this center, basically, because the place I was in West Hollywood, it was getting overrun with patients, and the landlord couldn't deal with it, so he gave me notice. And then literally from 1 hour of him giving notice, I was invited into this space. And we're like, oh my God, it was like from one little room to an entire 5,000 square foot clinic. When we moved in here, it was literally, it had been left unfixed since 1972. So there was a lot of rehab that we had to do for this clinic. But that's what brought us into this space. And my own personal journey as a patient of myself, a little before that, I had fallen off my bike riding on the boardwalk in Venice, and I broke my hip. And I had developed what's called CRPS, regional chronic pain syndrome, in my entire right leg. And I was miserable. For like 2.5 years, I was walking around in constant pain, 24/7. Pain when I slept, pain when I walked, so it was pain all the time. So I started going around to every doctor and healer I knew in LA. Everyone helped me a little bit, right? But it wasn't until I met Jack Cruz and Wim Hof, those 2 guys. They both said the same thing, ice baths. And so I'm like, okay, what do I got to lose? So I built my first ice bath, started doing 11 minutes a day, and I just intuitively did that. I mean, most people nowadays say do 3 to 5 minutes, which that's what I do now. That I'm healed, I do 3 to 5 minutes. But in healing, severe pain, I got the most relief at 11 minutes at 32 degrees. So it was pretty intense. But after doing it for 3 months, my leg healed. I literally can remember exactly like it was yesterday. I was in the ice bath and I felt a meridian open up in the bone, through my bone, all the way down my leg, because it was affecting my whole leg. I felt the energy open all the way down into my foot. And after that ice bath, my leg was better. And then I continued doing ice baths just because it makes you feel so good. So the ice baths were really the start of this whole thing. And we still to this day have an ice bath here in the back. And so that was the start of it. And then it kind of evolved from treating patients. We always get very challenging patients. So our very first patient that we got in this space was a guy who had a congenital blood disease that caused a portal vein occlusion, okay? And what that meant is that his abdomen would swell with 13 liters of fluid that he'd have to go to the hospital every 3 weeks to drain. And the medical people said, the only thing you can do is come to see us every 3 weeks for the rest of your life. and I looked at him and I said, listen, you have a plumbing problem, okay? You've got a occluded artery. They unfortunately, like with a heart condition, they can, do a heart bypass. But with this portal vein, there is no surgery. I said, okay, so let's just re-engineer, let's, reverse engineer why you have an occluded artery. And I'm like, okay, so let's try a few things. We started doing infrared heat on the area. We started running the biocharger with the frequencies and the voltage to help with blood stasis. I had him doing rectal ozone. And the thing that really capped it off was vitamin D3 and K2, because that reverses clotting of the arteries and it puts the calcium back in the bone, right? These are just really common, basic ideas, but we put it all together and within 2 months, his problem was healed. Yeah, so that's, that's kind of like, whoa, we got something here, Well, yeah, it just started expanding. I mean, because the thing is once you discover one thing, then you realize there's other things and other things. And then eventually we got connected with the biohacking community with Dave Asbury. He's a patient here, by the way. He came in, spent a whole day with him here. So I'm constantly learning. I feel like the journey of life is an unending university. There's never a time where there's not something more to learn. We were just in Austin. I learned a ton more just this last weekend. Yeah. I'm 65. Actually, tomorrow is my birthday. I'm 65. Yeah, no, I mean, in fact, I just took up one wheeling, which is a board sport on one wheel, which is a lot of technical balancing and stuff, but I feel like that's vital as we age. We have to engage our body fully and in flow. That's another thing, is getting into the flow state. That's like that's what I'm looking at on a day-to-day basis. What can I do that puts me in flow? Well, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm going to put it out there because it's something I'm doing that's been a game changer, is coffee enemas. Okay, I don't know. A lot of people have heard of them, but one of the things that I discovered is through mutual friends, other guys who are our age who were doing them, complete game changer in your energy, how you feel. Because your liver, in the end of the day, is the protector of your health. And the healthier and more vital your liver is, the better you feel. And so I've done them over the years, intermittently. Now I do them daily. Because every time you do a coffee enema, you're 6xing your production of glutathione through the liver, and major benefits: anti-inflammatory, anti-aging, anti-cancer. And I didn't know this till recently, but I found a published PubMed study where they took melanoma patients, half they did coffee enemas, half they didn't. The ones who did lived 75% longer. the way I feel now, because literally stopped drinking coffee. I only do coffee enemas, and I have no desire. I used to drink like a whole pot of coffee a day, you know, and it felt okay, you know. It was like, yeah, but now that when I drink coffee, I'm like, ooh, it's way too acidic. When we go rectally with a coffee, it has the exact opposite effect. It actually, I feel like it's alkalizing my body instead of acidifying it. I try to meditate every day of some form of meditation. Sometimes it's yoga practice and breathing, Wim Hof breathing. I listen to mantra every morning. That's part of my Sikh training, by the way. Like that's my original spiritual practice are the Sikh mantras. And so every morning, and I've been doing this for 44 years. It's not a new thing. It's like every morning I get up and I meditate for an hour and a half listening to the mantras. Because that mantra, that sound current, is the spiritual realm. We're tapping into the spiritual from the sound current. They also call it the nod, which means sound current. So that's something I'm very into, and that comes from the Sikh tradition. One of the things, this is another practice I do, it's a little secret, what do you call it, hack, that it's a little revolutionary, a little controversial. I started doing psychedelics in 2016, initially with ayahuasca. And one thing that people may or might not know about ayahuasca is that it taps you into the deepest emotions, the ones that are really profoundly stuck. And specifically in my case, it was my relationship with my father from a very young age. And you know, these type of things that happen to us, they get imprinted, and then a lot of how we live our lives is like based on those emotions that we initially encountered when we were very young children. And doing very deep, you know, psychological work in the context of psychedelics done with a proper guide, okay? So none of this stuff should be done recreationally or on your own. You need a true, say, shaman or expert who has years of experience, who knows how to guide you through those emotions, because those hard emotions, you can call it the shadow self or whatever, those are the ones we need to encounter and then transform in the sense of learning forgiveness and then love. You know, and in the end of the day, it's all about that, forgiveness and love. But to get to that forgiveness and love, you have to re-experience the pain and then forgive it. And that's the key, you know, and I've seen this with even my closest people in my family. You know, just to say you forgive means nothing unless you truly feel that pain and feel the forgiveness from your heart, from the point where you are in tears and crying. If you can't get to that point, you haven't broken through yet. And that happens to me quite often now, because because I have a lot of experience with it, I do my own sessions, because I know how to navigate the energy. Not with ayahuasca, now I use a substance called 5-MeO, DMT, which again, not something that anyone should play with unless it's in the context of a true shaman healer who understands the power of these substances. But as you know, as we age, they're very powerful tools to access those deeper emotions. Because it's one thing to read a book and be all positive, but it's a whole other thing when you go deep into your soul and you encounter that pain and you release it by healing it and forgiving and then loving. So that means, and in my context, the way I apply that now in my life, everyone in my life, friend, foe, enemy, people I don't even know, you know, all the bad things that are happening now on the planet, I'm sending them love. You know, even if it's horrific, it's still love. You know, and that, you know, tapping in at that level, that's what gives you peace. You know, there's no peace without love. Well, I think the biggest thing is our relationships, first with ourselves, but then with everyone in our life, in the microcosm, and then that reverberates into the macrocosm, the whole planet, the whole universe. So it all starts with you. That's why you have to have a personal practice where you're giving to yourself every day. And that's my main thing. That's something I learned from my yogic training, is the first thing you do is you take care of yourself through your physical, your mental, your emotional, your spiritual, through your daily practice, right? It can't be something you just do occasionally. It's a daily practice that you practice moment to moment.